Welcome back to Smith History, separating the Smith from the myth, where the stories are true, the memories are mostly intact, and the exaggerations are kept to a minimum. Well, a reasonable minimum. Today's episode comes straight from the deep recesses of my mind, the place where childhood adventures, family chaos, and questionable fashion choices all go to mingle. I'm heading back to the early 1970s, a time of streakers, baseball cards, desert heat, and the Smith family's ongoing, never-ending, absolutely not final permanent moves to Phoenix, Arizona. And before you ask, no, I cannot tell you how many times we moved to Phoenix. That number is about as reliable as someone saying the check's in the mail, or a dentist telling you you won't feel a thing. Let's just say we moved a lot. Let's start with 1974. Dad had uprooted us once again from our friendly confines of Marion, Ohio, and once again hauled us across the country to Phoenix. In 1974, I was 16. It was July, and it was hot enough to fry an egg on the hood of a Chevy Impala. One particular day, Mom and Dad decided we were going to Old Tucson, probably on the suggestion of Dad's younger brother Dallas, who always had a knack for recommending places that cost money. What a place! It was built in 1939, nestled between Chicaro National Park and Tucson Mountain Park. It was the filming locations for hundreds of classic westerns, including my favorite western of all time, El Dorado. Also Rio Bravo, Three Amigos, Charro with Elvis, the outlaw Josie Wales, even scenes from Tombstone. They were all filmed there. Little House on the Prairie, High Chaparral, The Wild Wild West. If it had a cowboy, a saloon, or a tumbling tumbleweed, chances are it passed through Old Tucson. Even though it seems like a dream, I know I went there that day in '74. I still have the brochure from that day, because even as a teenager, I saved things. Brochures, ticket stubs, newspaper clippings. I don't know why, I just did. Turns out I was building the archives for this very podcast. It's something I still do to this very day. Anyway, back to Old Tucson. After a 2-hour drive from Phoenix through a long, lonely highway lined with more cactus than people, we finally arrived. And that's when Dad saw the price of admission, $3 per child. Now in 1974, for Mom and Dad, that was $20 total. Adjusted for today's inflation, that's about $170. And that didn't include food, or drinks, or the emotional toll of 5 boys in a theme park. I remember vividly, Dad took one look at that price and said, no, not going in. He stayed in the car all day in July in Arizona. That's commitment or stubbornness, probably both. And that, my friends, is what separates the Smith from the myth. And while 1974 gave us Old Tucson, it also gave us something else, the streaking fad. For those too young to remember, streaking was when otherwise normal people decided to run naked through public events. It happened at ball games, concerts, even the Academy Awards that year. Yes, the Oscars. Nothing says Hollywood glamour like a naked guy sprinting across the stage. And one warm evening in Marion, Ohio, after one of my baseball games at historic Lincoln Park, my dad and I became unwilling participants in this national phenomenon. I clearly remember we were walking to our car at dusk when we heard giggling behind us. Not normal giggling, the kind of laughing that tells you something stupid is about to happen. Suddenly, these two idiots came sprinting past us, laughing like hyenas, and nearly brushing Dad's right shoulder. And there was just enough light to see the unmistakable sight of two naked backsides bouncing into the distance. Now, my dad was an Army veteran. He didn't like long hair, he didn't like the Beatles, he was even on the guardsman's side in the Kent State shootings. So you can imagine how thrilled he was to have two greasy hamburgers streak past him, showing their buns in all their glory. And he didn't swear very often, but he muttered something about the vulgarity of their actions. And what separates the Smith from the myth is, of course, it couldn't have been two shapely young females. Oh no, it had to be two guys who looked like they'd been deep fried in motor oil. Another Smith memory burned into history. And let's rewind a few years back even further to 1971, when I had a paper route in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. I used the money for the essentials, baseball cards, and not just any cards. 1971 tops, only tops, 10 cents a pack, a future Hall of Famer in every handful, and a slab of pink gum that probably contributed to half my dental bills. Every week I'd walk into the Ben Franklin 5 and 10 and buy my cards. I saved them. I treasured them. And then one day I came home after school. Mom had raided my room. While I was at school, she threw away all my baseball cards, my newspaper clippings, my collectibles, everything. Her excuse? They were quote-unquote collecting too much dust, and she was tired of cleaning my stuff. God forbid I should have some happiness as a teenager. And I always say I would have been a millionaire if Mom hadn't thrown away my baseball cards. And I stand by that today. Those 10-cent cards go for $10 to $20 a piece now. Not cents, dollars. I'm slowly getting some of them back. Every card show I go to, I look for those beautiful 1971 Topps cards. Black border, signature on the front. They're like little pieces of my childhood calling out to me. But not all memories from that era were tragic. Some were educational. Still in 1971, my brother Jeff and I went to a professional women's basketball game at our local high school in Upper Sandusky. The team was called the Redheads, and they were exactly that, all redheads, all talented, and to my 13-year-old eyes, all very cute. Jeff and I sat in the front row. The gym was packed and loud, and during one loose ball, one of those shapely red-haired players dove to save it and fell right into my lap. Now, as a 13-year-old boy, that moment was burned into my memory with the clarity of 1,000 suns. It was probably the first time I ever touched a female, and I will tell you, I still remember it. But that night wasn't done. I remember like it was yesterday. It's halftime. The team is shooting around before the second half, when another loose ball rolled toward us. Jeff grabbed it. I remember the crowd urged him to shoot. Now, Jeff had been practicing a running hook shot for months. This was his moment. At this time, he was barely 5 foot tall. He had not begun his growth spurt yet. I remember he ran to the top of the key and launched a running hook shot. Nothing but net. Yes, that's the crowd you hear roaring. It might have been the loudest cheer of the night, and it was one of the loudest cheers Jeff would ever hear in his life. Jeff had his moment, and had mine. And 55 years later, both moments are still vivid. Fast forward to 1974, back in Phoenix again. Jeff appeared on the local kids show Wallace and Ladmo. This was a legendary program on KPHO, Channel 5, offbeat humor, live skits, Ladmo bags. It shaped Arizona culture for decades, and as kids, we never missed it. I don't remember why Jeff was on the show. He had some collection or some achievement to showcase. That part Jeff probably remembers, but for me, it's lost to history. But I was watching at home, and right before commercial break, the cameraman zoomed in on Jeff's face for a close-up. But unfortunately, another moment lost to history. It's only vivid in my mind. To me, Jeff was a wonderkind. He was very sharp, analytical, quick. I remember as a kid he would constantly call in to WMRN, the local Marion, Ohio radio station, and he would win the daily prize. One time he called again the next day. He knew the answer, and when the DJ asked him his name, Jeff said, "My name is," and hung up. He knew he couldn't win the prize 2 days in a row. But I remember the DJ on air said, "Some kid knew the answer and for some reason he hung up." That was Jeff. He would also watch basketball games, and as a 10, 11-year-old, he would do the box scores. I saved a lot of those box scores. I still have them because that's what I do. I collect history, and now I tell it on my podcast. These stories, old Tucson, streakers, baseball cards, red-haired basketball players, Jeff's running hook shot, Wallace and Ladmo. They're the threads of our family tapestry. Some are funny, some painful, some embarrassing, but all unforgettable. And that's what separates the Smith from the myth. The myth is the polished version, the one where the moves to Phoenix were organized, the baseball cards were preserved, and the streakers stayed home. But the Smith is real, sometimes messy, often chaotic, hilarious, and worth remembering. Thank you for joining me on another journey into the deep recesses of my mind. Until next time, keep your memories close, your family closer, and your baseball cards in a fireproof safe. My name is Brian Smith, and we are history.